Well, I teach an intro to environmental politics, Political Science 217, which is a survey of environmental politics around the world with a focus on the United States. Then my capstone, my senior research seminar, is a focused look at global warming and the politics of climate change and climate policy around the world, international agreements, national laws and policies, and so on. When I started teaching environmental politics in the mid-1990s, students were skeptical. Oh, global warming, is it real? So I would have to spend part of the semester presenting the evidence to make clear that in fact climate change was happening, it was unprecedented, and it was due to human activities. I don't have to do that anymore. I can skip over that whole introductory part where I try to give people the basic information, because most students come to Providence College already familiar with the changing climate or changing environmental conditions, even in their own homes. The climate is changing so rapidly now that people can see it from one year to the next, from one decade to the next. It's been almost 65 million years since we've had the climate conditions we have now. We're now in the midst of what scientists are calling the sixth great extinction. The last one was 65 million years ago, when we lost 80 or 90% of all the species on Earth. What we're going through right now is the extinction of as many as 200 species per day, largely because the climate is changing, but also because habitats are being destroyed, clear-cutting forests and so on. It is true that the Earth over millions of years goes through climate cycles. It's also true that right now we are supposed to be in a cooling cycle. We are supposed to be entering an ice age. Instead, we are seeing record high temperatures. So even the argument that the Earth goes through cycles, and therefore we needn't worry about the accelerating heat in the atmosphere and on Earth, is simply wrong. Because if you look at those long cycles, we're supposed to be on the downslope. Instead, we're on a rapid upslope. There was a time just a couple of years ago when climate scientists, very, not panicked, but very concerned about the speed with which the climate was changing, were arguing that we had perhaps until 2030 to make dramatic changes in our emissions of carbon. The latest reports from just the last month or so are saying we have about 18 months. We have about a year and a half to dramatically reduce carbon emissions, or we will pass a tipping point where no matter what we do, we will not be able to avoid a dramatic increase in temperature, dramatic sea level rise. If the Greenland ice sheet were to completely dissipate, melt into the North Atlantic Ocean, it would raise global sea levels about 22 feet. That is enough to flood every coastal city on the planet, which is about a third of the world's population lives within a few dozen meters of sea level right now. So the potential damage of sea level rise, the melting of the Arctic, the melting of the Greenland and Antarctic glaciers is absolutely catastrophic. What we can do is, as quickly as possible, reduce our emissions of carbon, that is, reduce the use of fossil fuels, oil, coal, and gas, dramatically increase our utilization of renewable sources, especially wind and solar. Wind energy and solar energy are now competitive with coal for generating electricity. Germany now, many weeks out of the year, gets a majority of its electricity from renewable sources. There are countries in the world that are accelerating their investment in renewable energy. The U.S. is a laggard. The U.S. is one of the last countries on the planet to take climate change seriously and redirect our subsidies, redirect our government research into renewables rather than fossil fuels. If those billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars each year that goes directly from the taxpayer to the oil companies, if that money were instead redirected to alternative energy, to developing solar panels, more cost-effective solar panels, developing a more rapid expansion of offshore wind energy, we could dramatically reduce our carbon emissions. But as long as the taxpayers are subsidizing the very industry whose continued production is causing global warming, we'll never be able to get ahead of the curve.